Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. On CBS today, which I don't often peruse, but a headline caught my attention. Give this a minute before you turn it off. The Miami Dolphins wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, was called an excellent leader because they removed the ping pong table from the practice room. And Tyreek Hill's active leadership, remember, this is his first year on the team. He's a veteran of the NFL, but this is his first year on the team. Well, his brave active leadership was to go to management and say, hey, where'd the ping pong table go? Because nobody told the players. Yes, this is a courageous act of leadership, going to management and asking about a ping pong table. They were all worried that their little players' ping pong tournament was going to fall through. I might remind you that Miami Dolphins have had two quarterbacks go into concussion protocol over the past couple weeks. Their starter, Tua Tagovailoa, in quite controversial circumstances. So a leader is not rallying the troops. A leader is not, getting the job done. A leader is about a ping pong table. Now, I remember the dot-com boom when they would have a whole suite full of games to keep employees distracted and let them blow off steam. And while I will admit it was a good idea, it didn't work. But this is the kind of thing that is adversely valued in our economics. Tyreek Hill, who is making an insane amount of money, I think $48 million off the top of my head, is worried about a ping pong table. Well, if that's what makes you happy, give me $10 million back, and I will make sure that the nicest ping pong table ever made will be in that locker room. But we see it's not about that. It's about distracting the players. You guys know, if you've listened long enough, that Silverlight tends to favor the players because I take a bigger perspective. It's millionaire players taking from billionaire owners. And while it's unfair that that money gets used on sports instead of, medicine or space travel or something, we live in a capitalist system. And these players have an average career of about 2 to 3 years. So it's a good thing that they make the money that they do while they do because, being in the NFL, you take all sorts of hits. You basically destroy your body for a couple of years. You deserve to have a retirement egg after all that. But then I think about the regular world. And it doesn't matter whether you're in an office or whether you're in a warehouse, whether you knock on doors, whatever you do for a living, you're basically doing the same. You're selling your body and your mind to a company for a certain amount of hours each day, and you don't get half the amenities that you should. Hell, some of you are afraid to take vacation. Some of you are afraid to take days off. Even if you're desperately sick, whether it's through the plague or whether it's through anything else, you're still afraid to take that time off. This is not humane in any sense of the word. This is ludicrous, to be honest. We're focusing on the ping pong table and not on the concussion. Yes, it's a good fluff story. Yes, it's a way to take eyes off the more serious issues. And believe me, the Dolphins are not the only team with concussion issues. Pretty much every team winds up with that by the end of the year, and players just absolutely destroy their bodies. But what about somebody sitting at an office desk? They're getting zero exercise, aside from whatever customer or client riles their heart up that particular day. They're just not doing very well overall. Cubicle farms are not an ideal environment. Warehouses are even worse. I don't know why, but it's somehow considered unnecessary to build any sort of employee comfort into warehouses. Whether it's summer and it's blazing heat or winter and frigid cold, there's not even a few space heaters. You might have one section of the dock that is heated, but that's to keep the freight warm and from freezing. That's not for the employees. And it is an expensive proposition. For the same token, it's a humane one. If you ask a bunch of dock workers whether they'd rather have a ping pong table or whether they'd like to have some heat on the dock, because, okay, summer sucks, but if managed correctly and water is available and they look after it, summer can be done properly. Winter, I'm going to tell you a little story from Silverlight's past. One of the jobs I used to do was a router, which meant I decided which freight went on which truck in the winter. And I'm a Canadian through and through. I've been in winter exercises with the military where you went out at minus 40 and you stayed out there. But just being on that dock sucked the heat out of you. I did that for a few weeks until I felt management knew what I was saying. And I just said, can I get an office? And they found this old rat trap closet downstairs. And it was dusty as hell, but it was still better than standing on that dock freezing to death. I remember the worst thing was I had nice gloves, but you're handling a lot of paper. So I had to be on that dock, manipulating the paper, taking one page, putting it in one pile, etc. And there's like 20 piles of these things. And then I would scan them into the computer. That I could do inside. But it was sometimes a race because freight's coming in all the time, new bills are coming in all the time. And yeah, it was not pleasant. And I was only doing that for a couple of weeks. There's people who do it for literally half the year, depending on what longitude and latitude you might be at. But for a majority of people, that is considered not to be an issue. My wife, God bless her, she works in an environment that does not have a temperature to her liking. And she responds to that by constantly telling our little girl, you got to dress up warm. You got to, even when it's a nice day, she's saying, oh, you're not warm enough. And from her perspective, that is true. And I know kids tend to say, oh, no, I'm fine. And they're outside shivering. Our little girl was in the pool and like her skin was turning colors and she was shivering like you would not believe. And she still insisted she was okay because she wanted to swim. But back to the workplace. Workplaces don't know how to handle workers. You got some managers and some CEOs who are fantastic, but most of them are like, here you are, this is the environment you're working for 8 hours. It's only 8 hours a day, deal with it. And then they ask you to come back and do overtime. In order for capitalism to move forward, there has to be a mutual respect. It's not only a manager's time or a CEO's time, it's also a worker's time. I despise the after-hours phone, except the way my friend had it. Whereas he was working it, if he got a call, I think they automatically charged the vendor $200-$300, and of that he got like $50 to $100, depending on how far away he was to drive in. Plus he got mileage. Like they set that program up so it was a darned inconvenience, but it was worth your time to answer it. Most companies are not that considerate. You're salaried, you do what I tell you to. We need a new paradigm in this world where you are salaried, yes, but you are paid for your 9 to 5 or whatever hours you are deemed to be there. After that, everything is considered after hours because you're sitting down to a nice dinner with your family, whatever your favorite dinner is, and that after hours phone rings. And we all know the horror stories from customer service, whether it's the person complaining that their computer isn't working because the power went out in their neighborhood, or whether it is actually an emergency and, you know, power isn't getting through to 10,000 homes because some idiot pigeon or something decided it was going to go look for corn inside one of the high voltage towers. Both possibilities exist. And unfortunately, the former is a little bit more common. And the stuff that really shouldn't have interrupted your lunch. The Canadian government is moving towards forcing employers to realize that you need to be unplugged for a certain amount of the day. I've worked on call about a year or two of my life. I managed to avoid it for a long period of time because I would negotiate it out of my contract as soon as I could. And the reason is, one Friday night, I had a driver that was loaded up. He scaled the truck, and somehow he got past the border. I don't know, luck. And then he called me from Detroit area. And then he said, hey, I thought something was wrong with the truck. So I pulled over and had it scaled, and I'm 10, 20,000 pounds over. I know, but it was a big mistake. It wasn't an oopsie. It was a, haha, let's put an extra little bit on him. And I'm like, okay, guy, I get what you're saying. Unfortunately, I don't know the Detroit area very well. So let me call my boss. So I called my boss, who was, he was an astronaut, let me tell you, because I wanted to fire him into space. I called my manager up and I said, hey, this guy's over the border and he's in Detroit. He has to go to Texas and he's 20,000 pounds overweight. Now, the fine back then was basically $1 per pound. So you're looking at a $10,000, $20,000 fine. So what does my genius manager tell me to do? Tell him to use his map books and avoid the scale. He's in Detroit going to Texas. And my voice literally sounded like that. Like, are you nuts? Like, if it was, he was in Detroit going to Chicago, okay, it's going to be tough, but maybe we can make this work. But not going the entire breadth of a country with an overweight load. If the scales don't get him, the DOT does. Now, after that, I had to call the driver and tell him the news because I did not have a better solution. And at that point, I was still pretty inexperienced in highway stuff. So I called my driver up and I told him, okay, here's what the boss is saying. And I said to the driver, listen, I support you here. This is an illegal order, and it is. And whether you choose to move or not to move, I support you. He said, I'm going to think about it. And then he decided to talk to me for the next hour and a half. Just about, life, the universe, blah, blah, blah. Let's pretend that we're buddies. Not that we're not buddies, but the same token, I don't know the guy from Adam, really. So I missed out on a Friday night for almost 2 hours dealing with an issue that should never have been an issue. It should have been find the nearest weigh scale, find the nearest cross-docking facility, we'll figure it out from there. That should have been what it was. The safe option, the legal option. But no, the boss told me to do something illegal. The driver told me his entire life story. Meanwhile, I had my ex-wife, who was pregnant with our child, inside wondering what I was doing outside because I didn't want to be in there and, with a TV and stuff like that. And that's what my on-call time was. Amenities? The only amenities I can think of ever in any of the companies I've worked for was either a pizza party or a Christmas party. And since I work nights, none of them ever left me a darn thing. No, not a darn thing. I wouldn't even get table scraps left over. Corporate culture needs to change. It needs to realize that there's workers 24/7. And if there's somebody on at midnight, it costs you nothing to order them a small or a medium pizza to keep them happy. Instead of leaving a whole bunch of half-eaten food in the kitchen saying, oh, go help yourself. Well, gosh, after everybody's tucked into the cake and I can see the fingerprint marks, that's not very nice. Or, we have a vending machine for all your wants and needs. Yeah, I need the vending machine to be somewhere else because it's basically funneling my paycheck back into the company. Companies and people don't understand perks come at a cost. And I guarantee you, if you get caught on that Miami Dolphins ping pong table, anytime that you're not on a break, it's noted, it's written up, and even though they can't fine you or fire you, even though they can, somebody is taking a note of it. While he should have been running wind sprints, he was playing ping pong with Sir Leicester McGowan. Made up name. At least I think it is. There was a company that had an entire games room, and nobody was ever in it. So there was an employee from across the road who said to them, "Hey, you got this whole games room, and nobody's ever in it." And one of the employees from there said, "That's because they record everything you do in there." Good reason. The perk is there, but you don't dare use it. Just like people don't dare to use their sick days or their personal time off or any of those other days. Because they're afraid of their manager saying no. Well, managers can only threaten you so much, and usually it's bluster. As a manager, I can tell you, if I am not explicitly given the right to hire and fire, and even if I do, you can't touch the employees. And even if you can touch the employees, there are so many restrictions. Like, as a manager, I can't just hand 2 write-ups across and then expect the guy to be fired. No, I then got to go to HR. I then got to go through this whole process to get somebody fired. It is a hassle to get somebody fired, unless you're working for a one-person operation and they go wild with power, in which case usually you can put together a constructive dismissal case. We have all these benefits that were fought for by the generations before us, and we don't use them. And the ones that they give us, like a ping pong table, are counted against us. It's ridiculously unfair. So, if you get any sort of benefits, I want you to use them. Don't build them up. Don't think I need them for a rainy day. Hell no. Use them. It's 2022. A sick day is a sick day. Personal time off? Well, for those of you not doing split time, flex time, or whatever time, that's just an excuse for you to have another day off. And whether it's a mental health day, although I would never explain it as such to my supervisors, or whether it's you have an appointment you can't avoid. There's another story. At 3 o'clock, I had an appointment at the doctor's where they put the drops in your eyes and they tell you to take the rest of the day off. Well, my manager told me I had to go into work after that. I'm like, but I'm off at 5. It takes an hour to do this. And then she expected me to sit behind her and either pass things to the other people in the department, which I could do with my sunglasses off. And then she asked me to read a piece of paper, which I looked like the most ridiculous stereotype possible, holding out a piece of paper, trying to find that perfect angle. Like I looked like a 70-year-old trying to focus on something. And I was finally blearily able to make out, 1 or 2 words, and I was able to infer the rest. She's like, "See, I told you you're not blind. You can read that." I'm like, no, I can barely read it. But anyways, it's just the way bosses get, and I don't understand it. Some bosses are fantastic. Some bosses will bend over backwards for you. Other bosses are just intoxicated with their own power. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And don't forget to click the link down in the description and buy one of the books there because it really helps the channel out. And we hope you have a fantastic day.